I thought being abandoned at the airport was the worst moment of my life, until a billionaire whispered something that made me stay. Before starting the story, please subscribe and like the video, and listen through end for chill. Airports have a particular kind of cruelty. They're full of movement, yet somehow you can feel completely frozen inside them, trapped between where you were and where you're supposed to go next. I learned that the hard way at Terminal C, Gate 47, with my suitcase standing upright beside me like it was waiting for instructions I no longer had the authority to give. My phone buzzed once, then again, then stopped. I refreshed my messages for the 10th time, watching the screen glow and dim like it was tired of disappointing me. Mom, we had to leave. Dad, you'll understand later. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no instructions, just abandonment, delivered efficiently like an automated boarding announcement. I stood there watching families reunite, couples argue over coffee, children cry over lost toys. Everyone had a destination. Everyone had someone waiting, except me. I was 26 years old, standing in one of the busiest airports in the country, suddenly realizing that I had been quietly erased from my own life. At first, I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they missed a message. Maybe they were pulled aside. Maybe this was some twisted test. But the minutes stretched into an hour, then two. My boarding pass expired. My suitcase felt heavier, not physically, but symbolically. Everything I owned was in that bag, and suddenly it felt like evidence of a life no one wanted anymore. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. That's when the panic crept in. Not loud, not dramatic, but surgical. It cut away my assumptions one by one. They meant to leave me, and whatever reason they had, they believed it justified disappearing without a word. I noticed him before he spoke. Men like him don't blend in. They don't rush, they don't fidget. The world adjusts its pace around them. He sat a few seats away. Tailored charcoal suit, silver watch, leather shoes that had never seen a puddle. His hair was salt and pepper, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested he never waited for permission. He'd been watching me. Not openly, not rudely, just observantly. When he finally stood, I assumed he was boarding a private jet hidden somewhere behind the terminal walls. Instead, he walked straight toward me. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, something understated and expensive. Then he leaned in. His voice was low, controlled, and he whispered the sentence that rewrote my future. They didn't abandon you. They were paid to leave you. The words didn't register immediately. My brain rejected them on instinct, like a foreign object. What? I asked. He didn't repeat himself. He just straightened, adjusted his cufflinks, and added calmly, "If you leave this airport right now, you'll never know who bought your silence." I should have walked away. I should have laughed, called security, done anything rational. But fear does something dangerous. It sharpens curiosity. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, precisely. "My name doesn't matter, but what happens next does." I later learned he was a billionaire. At that moment, he was just a stranger who spoke like he already knew how my story ended. He offered me coffee, not as a date, not as charity, as a negotiation. We sat near the window where planes lifted into the sky like they were escaping gravity itself. "He signed a contract," he said casually. "It wasn't hard. People sell what they don't understand the value of." My chest tightened. "You're lying," I said. He nodded. "Yes," he replied, "but the lie works." That should have terrified me. Instead, it anchored me. Here's the truth people don't like admitting. Sometimes you don't stay because something sounds true. You stay because it sounds better than the alternative. Believing my parents abandoned me because they didn't want me was unbearable. Believing someone else orchestrated it, that gave the pain a direction, and pain with direction becomes purpose. He arranged a hotel, a car, a phone that wasn't mine. He never touched me, never raised his voice, never threatened. He didn't need to. He let me believe I was choosing. "You can leave any time," he said, but every door he opened made the outside world feel less real. Days passed, then weeks. He taught me how influence works, how people trade loyalty for comfort, how truth is rarely profitable. One night, I asked again about my parents. He paused just long enough to feel intentional. "They're safe," he said, "and very well compensated." Something about the phrasing bothered me. Not paid, compensated. I didn't uncover the truth all at once. It came in fragments, a document left open too long, a name repeated in a call he didn't know I overheard, a date that matched my birthday. The contract wasn't about silence. It was about custody. I hadn't been abandoned. I had been transferred. The lie was that they were paid. The lie was that he hadn't paid them. He didn't rescue me from abandonment. He manufactured it. I was never meant to leave the airport. I was meant to stay. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He looked almost proud. "Everyone belongs to someone," he said. "You just belonged to the wrong people first." That was the moment I understood. Power doesn't shout. It whispers and waits for you to lean in. I did leave eventually, not dramatically, not heroically, quietly, with knowledge instead of innocence. My parents never tried to find me, and he never chased me, because ownership doesn't require pursuit. It only requires belief, and for a while, I had believed him. I expected escape to feel loud, running footsteps, slamming doors, a dramatic breath of night air as I crossed some invisible boundary between ownership and autonomy. Instead, it felt administrative. A canceled reservation, a suitcase already packed, a car service he hadn't ordered for once. I left at dawn when the city looked unfinished, like a set before the actors arrived. No note, no confrontation, no final speech. I didn't want closure. I wanted distance. For the first time since the airport, I made a choice without checking whether it aligned with someone else's plan, and that terrified me more than captivity ever had. The apartment I rented was small, anonymous, and aggressively normal. White walls, cheap furniture, a window that faced another building's window, two lives politely ignoring each other. On my first night, I slept on the floor. The mattress felt too deliberate. I woke up to silence so complete, it felt artificial. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You chose well. The neighborhood is statistically safe." My chest tightened. I hadn't given him the address. I hadn't told anyone. I turned off the phone and dropped it into the sink, letting water run until the screen went dark. I told myself it was coincidence. That lie lasted 12 minutes. Here's the thing about powerful people. They don't need to be near you to be everywhere. The bank rejected my account application, no explanation. The job offer I'd accepted was suddenly no longer available. My rental agreement was flagged for additional verification. Every obstacle arrived politely, bureaucratically, reasonably. That's how you know it's intentional. Force leaves bruises. Control leaves paperwork. The second phone arrived in a plain envelope, slipped under my door like junk mail. No return address, no postage mark, just a device already powered on. One message. "You said you could leave. I didn't say you could disappear." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then another message appeared. "You should eat today." A delivery notification popped up immediately after. Same food I'd ordered the night before, same modifications. No app installed. I didn't touch the bag. I threw it away unopened, hands shaking like I'd brushed against something radioactive. I used to think he bought me. That was the comforting version. The truth was worse. He bought access to my name, my records, my future probabilities. He didn't need to lock doors. He just needed to quietly own the systems that decided whether doors existed for me at all. Freedom, I realized, wasn't binary. It was leased. I finally contacted my parents, or tried to. Their numbers were disconnected. Their house sold, not foreclosed, not seized, sold cleanly, quietly, efficiently. I found a forwarding address, a gated community halfway across the country. I drove there with borrowed money and a borrowed sense of hope. The guard checked my ID, frowned, then spoke into his radio. After a pause, he handed it back. "They're not accepting visitors," he said gently. "By request." By whose? He didn't answer. The email arrived by mistake. That's what it said anyway. Internal use only. Asset continuity review. I wasn't listed as a person. I was listed as a variable. I read it 3 times before my hands started shaking. He hadn't lost me. He was studying me. I finally understood why he'd whispered a lie at the airport. Not because it was convincing, but because it was destabilizing. It cracked my understanding of loyalty just enough to make everything else negotiable. If my parents could sell me, then nothing was sacred. That was the real purchase. Not my body, not my time, my assumptions. Paranoia doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives reasonable. I stopped trusting chance, stopped trusting kindness, stopped trusting myself. Every delay felt orchestrated. Every stranger felt adjacent to him. When a man held the elevator door too long, my heart raced. When a woman smiled too knowingly, I changed routes. The city felt like a maze where the walls moved only when I wasn't looking. He didn't contact me for weeks. That silence was intentional. Then, one night, the second phone rang. I answered before I could stop myself. "You're doing well," he said. I hated how calm his voice made me feel. "What do you want?" I asked. "To remind you," he replied, "that autonomy is expensive, and you left without funding." I swallowed. "You ruined my life." A pause. "No," he said. "I revealed how fragile it already was." He didn't ask me to come back. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he offered structure, a job, remote, anonymous, well-paid. No public ties, no visible leash. "Think of it as collaboration," he said. "You've already lived inside the system. Now you can learn how it works." "And if I refuse?" Another pause. "Then you'll continue learning the hard way." I wish I could say I refused out of principle, that I chose dignity over comfort. That's not what happened. I said yes because exhaustion is persuasive, because survival narrows your moral vocabulary, because fighting an invisible hand requires energy I didn't have anymore. I told myself I'd learn his weaknesses, that I'd wait, that this wasn't surrender, just postponement. Before we ended the call, he added one last thing, almost casually. "Oh," he said, "I should mention, your parents' security agreement expires next year." My breath caught. "They're safe," he continued, "but safety is a renewable service." The line went dead. That was when it clicked. Escape wasn't the end of the story, it was the middle. He didn't need to chase me, he only needed me to know that leaving had consequences that didn't land on me first. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I opened my laptop. If he believed I was still an asset, then he'd underestimated the one thing he hadn't purchased yet, my patience. The first rule I learned was this: people like him don't fear resistance, they fear competence. So I didn't fight, I complied. I accepted the work, signed nothing, asked no questions, learned quickly. The tasks were abstract: pattern recognition, behavioral forecasting, anomaly detection. I was reviewing datasets stripped of names and faces, training models to predict how people break, bend, or disappear when pressure is applied precisely. It took weeks before I realized I was learning how he did it. He didn't teach me cruelty, he taught me efficiency. Outcomes matter more than intentions, he said once, during a rare call. Morality is an interface problem. I nodded when he said things like that. I let him believe I was absorbing his worldview. What I was absorbing was his infrastructure. Which systems delayed funds? Which agencies traded discretion for convenience? Which compliance protocols existed only on paper? Power, I learned, wasn't centralized, it was distributed neglect. I stopped trying to rebuild my old life. That version of me was too easy to track. Instead, I became forgettable. No social media, no fixed address, no patterns. I paid for inconvenience with safety. Every step I took was small enough not to register as rebellion. He monitored drift, not intention. He tested me without warning. A fabricated crisis, a fictional asset, a simulated moral dilemma. The goal was simple. Would I protect the system or the person inside it? I chose the system. He was pleased. That night, I vomited. But he loosened oversight after that. Trusts, I learned, is often granted to people who betray correctly. He believed I wanted freedom. That was projection. Freedom was abstract. I wanted leverage. And leverage doesn't come from escape. It comes from understanding which screws not to turn, yet. I didn't contact my parents directly. That would have triggered alerts. Instead, I rerouted their dependency. A policy adjustment here, a vendor delay there, and reassignment framed as cost optimization. Nothing dramatic, just enough friction to force a review. Safety is renewable, he said. So is vulnerability. 3 months later, another internal email surfaced. Asset shows advanced system comprehension, risk level low, recommendation expand scope. That was my promotion. I was no longer monitored, I was integrated. From the inside, his empire didn't look like a fortress, it looked like a patchwork. Different contractors, different jurisdictions, different moral thresholds. He didn't control everything. He controlled just enough, and he assumed everyone else was as replaceable as I'd been. I didn't expose him. That would have been crude. I didn't confront him. That would have been emotional. I introduced noise, minor inaccuracies, delayed correlations, probabilities shifted by decimals no one would question. Not sabotage, entropy. The kind that looks like market variance, the kind no one investigates until it's too late. He called one night, voice tighter than usual. "Something's off," he said. I waited. "The systems are drifting." I swallowed my smile. "Systems do that," I repined, "especially complex ones." A pause. "That's what you said when we met," he said slowly. "No," I answered. "That's what you said." His empire didn't fall. It eroded. A compliance audit here, a partner quietly exiting there, a regulator asking questions that didn't require answers, just time. He still had money, still had influence. What he lost was certainty, and certainty is what power feeds on. Their security contract wasn't renewed, not canceled, just allowed to expire. No threats, no retaliation. They moved again, somewhere small, somewhere unremarkable. They never reached out. Neither did I. Closure is overrated. He called once more. "I underestimated you," he said. That was the closest he'd ever come to an apology. "You taught me everything," I replied. Another pause. "Do you think you won?" he asked. I considered it. "No," I said. "I think you stopped noticing when you lost." Silence. Then the line went dead, for the last time. I didn't expose him. I didn't destroy him. I made him smaller, contained, predictable. He still exists, but only within margins he can't see anymore. Years later, I passed through the same airport, same terminal, different gate. I watched a young woman standing alone with a suitcase, eyes scanning faces that weren't coming back. For a moment, I wondered if someone would lean in, whisper something that sounded like truth. No one did, and that was the difference. The lie that changed my life wasn't the whisper, it was believing power had to announce itself. It doesn't, it waits, and if you're patient enough, it teaches you how to take it apart. If that story gave you chill, drop a like, subscribe, and comment so I know you made it to the end. I've got another one. See you then.